Join me, 48 Hours correspondent Erin Moriarty, on my podcast, My Life of Crime, as I take on true crime investigations like no other. This season, I'm looking into the labyrinth of crime and secrets within families. I'm cutting straight to the evidence and talking to the people directly involved, including investigators and the families of victims. Listen to My Life of Crime with Erin Moriarty wherever you get your podcasts.
Girl, real talk. This whole "it's new year, time to reinvent myself" trash is not the vibe for 2024. You can find someone who loves you for you, as you are. You don't need to read a stack of self-help books, only eat sad salads, or start meditating at 5 a.m. to be ready for dating. So yeah, my advice is to download Bumble and find someone who embraces you the way you are right now. Let me know how it goes.
A note to listeners. The following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
I just think the podcast has helped, though. I really do. People have come out of the woodwork to support us, and I've actually had locals who have apologized. The young man has actually given a testimony to the youth in his church, talking about his lifestyle that he had prior to, giving his life over to the Lord. And there's a testimony he gave where he talks about witnessing a murder or knowing about a murder. I can't remember exactly how he stated it.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman. Cindy and I have been working on true crime cases for over 15 years together. We have met so many victims' families, and they're all amazing people who are dealing with the worst that humanity has to offer. We met Paula Fielder in 2018, and immediately we had a connection with her.
Paula is an amazing woman, and her strength and tenacity is beyond anything we've ever seen. But what most people don't know is that Paula's heart is broken, and all of the actions that she has taken over the years have been for one purpose, and one purpose only, which is to find Molly and bring her home.
And that is why we created this podcast, to help generate new tips and leads to move the case along, which is exactly what has been happening over the past few months. So today we wanted to check in with Paula and get her thoughts about where the case is going right now.
We're also going to talk to her about some new tips that have come in and how they line up with some old ones.
So we have Paula Fielder on the podcast today. It's been a few weeks since we spoke to her on the podcast, but we wanted to kind of reach back out to her to find out what's going on in Paula's world as far as this case, and also to kind of talk to you, Paula, about, this will be the 23rd hour that we've been doing podcasts on this case, and wanted to find out from you, through that process, what do you think's working with the podcast? What you don't think is working? What do we need to do to move this ball forward even more so? We have people reaching out to you. You're getting a lot of tips, but just wanted to check in with you overall. Just where do you think we are in this case right now?
Honestly, I feel like we may be further along in the case than I feel like that we've ever been. It has brought some very new interest to the case since the podcast has come out, and I think the people that had some doubt about our motives in the beginning and the things that were being put out publicly, I think they actually see it in a different light now and are able to actually feel the pain that we're feeling. I think a lot of people in the beginning, or actually for about 8 years, have thought that we just, some of the things that we were putting out was not, maybe an exaggeration of the circumstances that we've been through. Now I think they understand it a little bit more. It is as bad as we've said. The corruption, the way we've been treated by some in law enforcement and by Joe Russell. I mean, it's very evident how he has treated us. I mean, he said F the family, so I mean, that is his that's how he feels. He showed right there exactly how he feels toward us. I was on the phone with the reporter when Joe had actually called her back, and when she actually tried to talk to him about this, he just He was not very nice, and that's just how he has felt since the beginning. Interview that he did do on the news many years ago, where he stated that he does hope that we find answers because his family needs peace. If his family needs peace, they need to tell us what they know and help us get through this and get it over with, because it's not going to go away. His family will never have peace as long as Molly is missing.
I find it's really interesting how he kind of reframed it as he's the victim.
They have played the victim, but I think now people understand that they're not the victim, so that we're not saying these things just to be mean. Once you hear all the details of this and what we've actually been through, it's like people's like, gosh, maybe they're not exaggerating as to what has actually transpired over the last 9 years. I just think the podcast has helped, though. I really do. People have come out of the woodwork to support us, and I've actually had locals who have apologized. And so, in the tips, a lot of information, as you guys well know, has come in since, and that we are filtering out right now. So,
what do you think is some of the most significant points that we've covered in the podcast that you feel like is jolting this investigation and kind of giving it a rebirth? Because we know that's happening, because we know that the authorities are looking into this case more actively than they have in the past 9 years because of the podcast, because we're exposing a lot of the investigation flaws that happened, and whatever reason why they happened. But what do you think are some of the key points that we've highlighted that really needs further study and further investigation, and that will help us move the ball?
as you guys well know, I've gotten multiple calls from law enforcement since the podcast has started, more so than I have in 3 years. The information that's being put out there is nothing that they did not already know, but the fact that it's being highlighted in this way, I think that we need to continue exposing the information that we have received, or that I received over the last 9 years, or that my family has received over the last 9 years. We need to continue to expose that information in order to keep the authorities moving forward on the case. That seems to be the way you get things done. I understand that some feel like that I've caused more reasonable doubt in this case when this finally goes to a jury. I say to them, where were you? You guys know as well as I do the reasons behind finally doing the podcast, is because this is something that it's not something that just recently came up. This is something you guys have kind of thrown out there for a while, but never wanted to release the information. I never wanted to release the information that I had. I wanted to hold it close to the chest until at such a time that as this. And the reason behind it is, the fact that when you tell a family member, when it is said multiple times to you that it's a cold case, that tells me that nothing's being done. So the information that's being released is information that I have obtained through FOIA requests or other avenues to get, and it's our information, my information to release. So therefore, the creating of more work for the investigators, this is work that they've already had. This is nothing new to them because they knew all of this information prior to it being released. So I think we just need to continue on the path that we're going because it's working. It is what is working. And just since this podcast has started, we've listened or we've read 2 different articles about missing person cases being solved due to podcast. Mm-hmm. I think it is very helpful.
I mean, I think what just bothers us is when people say that you are causing the investigation to go nowhere, which is the most absurd thing we've ever heard, because without your voice pushing this, and your persistence to push this case would have gone away a long time ago. So when people are saying to us, the podcast or Paula is disrupting the investigation, there is no investigation, like you said. And there hasn't been one for a long time. And when there was an investigation, it was half-hearted. I don't feel that it was given the attention that it deserved in the beginning. And I think that that's where you lose a lot. If you don't put 100% in the beginning, every day that goes by, you're losing time, you're losing evidence, you're losing all kinds of things. And there's no denying that this case was never looked at properly in the beginning. So anything that comes after that, to me, there's nothing you could do at this point that could impede this investigation, because it's been stalled for a long time. And people need to understand that before they criticize you.
Yeah, I think that, and also we have confirmed that they still classify this case not as a homicide, but as a missing persons case, which I find, and I know that there's some technical legal term that's the way they can do that, but they don't even, as far as they're concerned, and it's pretty much has been said by the team that's investigating, is that we can't even prove that they're dead.
Right.
So that...
But they know they are. That's what they say. That they know they are. They're just unable to prove that yet. But I mean, I think they will. I haven't.
Because it's pretty much been told to you point blank, right? That exact statement, correct? That we're not even sure if they're dead?
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah. That has been said, but in the next breath, it's like, but we all know they are, just the fact that they can't prove it is the reason behind that statement.
I know it's been so confusing for you, and the fact that during this 9 years, that the only reason they would only kind of react to what you would give them, pretty much. So that was their investigation. They said, if Paula brings us something, or if someone comes forward, then we'll do it. And I do know for a fact that they do have a cold case unit as well, the OSBI. So I don't know if that was something new that they just started, but it has been confirmed that they do have a cold case unit that is working on cold cases, which is great. I think that's important because, obviously Molly and Colt aren't the only ones. There's a lot of other people out there with these unresolved cases. And we're hoping that this podcast kind of moves that ball forward for other cases as well. And investigators and people and victims' families can learn from what you have done and how this case was covered by the media and also by law enforcement to help navigate to do it better next time. Because I think there were so many balls dropped in the beginning on how this was happening that I think this is the worst case scenario on how any case can be covered from two people that were brutally murdered.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, when I think back to the beginning and how we were running ourselves ragged, I mean, it was all the time we were out doing something, talking to people, searching. Every weekend was a search for months until we were actually told by some in law enforcement, we're taking this over. And so we need y'all to stop. And it was getting too dangerous, is how they felt. Because as I've stated in a previous podcast, about the September Labor Day weekend 2013 incident when we went to Khan's house, and then the next day when Alex went out there and was held at gunpoint, that's when it pretty much got put to us that we need to just back off and we needed to let them handle it. And we kind of did for a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but you just can't stop, because within those 3 months in the beginning, it was like we felt like if we're not doing it, nobody's doing it. We've got to keep looking, so we were out there every single weekend. And I think families they have to remember is they are the only voice of that family member that is missing or has been murdered or whatever the case may be. And they have every right to scream and yell at the top of their lungs until they can get the help they need. It's like you just need to stop. Well, how do you stop? Was some, it's like that's what I ask. Explain that to me. If this was your own child, would you stop? Their answer is no.
Exactly.
So,
We've
so I
we've asked a
mean,
lot of these people that same question, and that's the
yeah.
same answer. I don't think anybody who is sane, who loves their family members, or wouldn't be doing the same thing that you're doing.
Well, they all say that they would. I mean, they all have
Right.
said it, every single one of them. So why is it okay for them to do it, but you're not supposed to do it? Because this is what happens. You're shining a light on all of the things that are wrong, and people don't like to see the truth. So they want to live in the world where they think they've done everything correct, and that's it. They don't want anyone questioning them, and they want to just keep carrying on that way. But that's not reality. I mean, from day one, this case has been mishandled in so many ways that have nothing to do with you. You've only shined a light on that. And I think that's what makes people upset. And that's unfortunate because you are the victim here. You are Molly's voice. It's unfortunate we've asked multiple people in Colt's family to speak to us. And, luckily Amber came forward to do that. And on the TV show, we did speak to his brother. But it's always nice to hear from that side as well, because they've lost a loved one too.
Oh, I know. It breaks my heart. And I don't know what they think my motives are, but, I think I've told y'all privately before, if I could go back in time and change all of this and not know any of these people, or them not know who I am, that would be the ideal situation in my life, because this is not something that I want to think about every day of my life, but it is. I can't help it. It's where I'm at, and that's just who I am. And I don't do anything for self-recognition or recognition for any of this. I just don't know how to let something go. And I guess it might be a control issue I have. I don't know. But, for people to assume that they think that I'm in this for anything other than helping Molly come home, they're so sadly mistaken. And, Colt.
Well, let's be clear. Let me just stop you a minute because I know where you're going. Let's be clear. Anything that's worth doing has never been accomplished by someone who's just passively sitting in the corner and not doing anything. Okay? So what you're doing is worth doing. I would say put all the naysayers out of your brain. And the only way to get any kind of acknowledgement and at least get attention to a case is by putting it out there. And fortunately, we did it with the television show. And now we're doing it with the podcast in order for things to happen.
Oh, I agree.
So I wouldn't, and I know it's hard for you because we've talked about this. You've been getting attacked by people. But like they said, no good deed goes unpunished. You're doing an amazing good deed here. And I don't know why people are attacking you, because all you want to do is find the truth and find Molly and Colt's remains. I don't even think at this point, I mean, you want justice to happen, but the most important thing is to bring them both home. You're just using the best tool you know in order to apply pressure to the powers that be. I mean, we see it every day in the press. You have politicians, you have people in government doing things, and then when they're questioned on it, and if you want to get any kind of movement on it, all you got to do is get it out there. You get it out there to apply pressure. And then they have to take notice. They can't ignore you anymore.
Right.
And you're not someone to be ignored because you're not going to stop. And it's because you're motivated by good. You're motivated by the fact that you just want to see a resolution to this case. And there's no closure, as we all talked about. There's no closure for those people getting murdered and brutally murdered, as we believed to be that they were. So there's no closure for that. But you want some sort of resolution, something that you can at least let the family know what happened to them and where they are so they can move on. And whoever did it, if they come forward or someone comes forward, that's a plus. That's just something else that we can kind of put in our hat and say, all right, well, we helped there. But that's law enforcement's job to enforce that, to find those people. And that's all we're doing is making them held accountable. The guy at Ventures with Purpose, Bishop, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago, he says it's all about accountability. He works with law enforcement every day looking for missing people. And he's like a regular guy. He's not law enforcement. Mm-hmm. He says in the places where there are problems with these cases is where there's a lack of accountability for the investigation. And that's all we're asking. You would give them tips over the 9 years, and then they would take the tips, but they wouldn't even communicate to you whether they were a good tip, bad tip, whether they vetted out or not. Mm-hmm. You know, and I'm hoping that and I think some of that is changing a little bit, but we're not ignoring it. You're not ignoring it. We just want to make sure the people investigating are also not ignoring it. So.
Right.
But I mean, Paula, we would have been the same way. Rob and I would never have given up either if something had happened to one of our family members. I mean, I think most people listening would agree that if you lose a loved one under these horrific circumstances, what kind of person can just walk away and pretend it didn't happen? I mean, it'd be hard pressed to find someone who would just say, oh, well, you know, doesn't matter. We'll never figure it out. You know, I mean, this is someone that you love in your family. This isn't a stranger. This is someone that you love in your family that you felt, you know, responsible for, even though she wasn't your daughter. But you also, I'm the same way with my cousin. I feel responsible for my cousin, you know, even though she's not my child. But if anything happened to her, I would be the same way. I mean, it's just, people can't judge other people in the circumstances because you don't know what you would do. It is horrific what's happened to these two people. And they were so young. And I have to say over and over again that Molly was just a child at 17 years old because people just forget that part. They forget that she was just a child. She's 17. Imagine all the stupid things people do at 17. That doesn't mean you have to end up like this, being murdered in this way and never be found, that your body's just thrown out there like animals. I mean, that's just not.
Oh, it just, you know, when I think about it, it's gut wrenching for me. I mean, just to think what she might have went through. And then the fact that she's just out there somewhere, you know, people don't just vanish into thin air. And, you know, to think that she's just out there, I don't know. It's just not right. You know, nothing about this is right. And it's just, God, you know, if she would have wandered off and because of some issues she had mentally or something like that, you know, but to know that somebody was responsible for this act and that she's missing because of that. And those people are out there walking amongst us, living their best life. And here we are, every one of us in this family is like at a mental standstill.
That's the confusing thing. You know, some of the names that have been mentioned in this case, and then you kind of do a little research on them, and you're right, they're all living their best life. They're, you know, they have families, they're doing things, they're going to football games, they're going to rodeos, they're doing things, they're living their life, they're raising their kids. And the fact that their name is associated with something as brutal as this, and if they are involved in this, and if they're harboring that secret, that's a big secret to live with. And I don't know how anybody can live with that.
What bothers me too is Khan's mother, because his sister went to the police station and made a statement about Khan being a murderer, basically. Mm-hmm. And his mother, we know, was in communication with him that night.
And yes, we know she was in communication with Khan that night. We have his cell phone records. We know who he is speaking to. We know she was in communication with Jennifer Knapp, his aunt. We know she was in communication with Sabrina Graham, the owner of the car they were in. She was in communication with all these people. And I believe that probably the only one in this whole entire scenario that's even having problems dealing with this is her, in my opinion. Just from the things I've been told, I think as far as being involved in what happened to Molly, I don't believe she had any involvement in that, but I believe she knows. I think she is the one who actually has a heart and who is very, very much struggling with the fact that she does know this, but this is her son, and she's struggling whether to turn her son in or keep her mouth shut, and she's chose to keep her mouth shut. I can't say with certainty that I would turn my son in, but I can almost say I would never let a family go through this, and if my child hurt anybody, I've made them turn themselves in for less, to be quite honest. So, and I remember listening to a recording of Khan talking to his dad while he was still in prison, and he was talking about his sister making the statement, writing out a statement to the police, and he says, "How do I deal with that? I can't trust anybody. I can't believe she would do this. She did that because it was the right thing to do." And from what I was told, her mother sat right there on the couch with her while she wrote the statement or told the police what he had said. And she encouraged her to do the right thing. But I don't know. I don't know if she's just struggling with all of that. I don't know her. I would hope that she would do the right thing. It's been 9 years. She could, I mean, yeah.
No, I do know that, she was a witness on the statement that Michaela wrote to the police. It just bothers me that the police didn't take it seriously, because he was the last person to be with Molly and Colt, and here's his sister.
Exactly. Well, and that's what a few weeks ago, after one of the podcasts, I got a call from the OSBI, and that is right there. He's the last known person with Molly and Colt. So we were going over a lot of things, and he told me, the OSBI agent told me to make a list. Tell me what you want me to do. I said, I made you this list in 2018. I made a list. We had a meeting. I made the list. What needs to be done? And, I said, I'm not doing it again. But I said, who was the last known person with Molly and Colt? Connett. I said, when's the last time you talked to him? I've never talked to him. Well, there's a problem. That's a problem. Why are we not talking to him? See, I can't wrap my mind around this. Why in the heck are we not talking to the last known person? He's out of prison now. Well, he's got a lawyer up. Well, I gave him my suggestion on that situation. But,
yeah, I know. They feel like it's a waste of time. If they're going to lawyer up, they're not going to get any information.
Yeah.
But I think they have to, I don't know, they've got to have some sort of leverage in order before they bring him in. And hopefully, as we continue to do this podcast, we'll create that leverage for them, because that's the whole purpose of this. We want to help law enforcement solve this case. We're not here to obstruct, but like you said before, all of the information that we've put out there, they have. They have. And let's talk a little bit about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the recordings that we've released over the last month or so. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are, and what do you think, out of all the recordings that were released so far, which one kind of sticks out the most, that you feel like has the most credibility to what you think and believe happened to both Molly and Colt?
Without a doubt, the eyewitness. That's the one that stands out to me the most, because everything that was told is things that we were told in the very early days, and I'm talking within the first weeks, probably before July even ended. Everything that was told in that by the eyewitness is what we were being told in the first 3 weeks that she was missing. So yeah, I believe him, although he wants to say now that it's been released that he made it all up. He also said first he tells me, he didn't tell me he made it all up at first. After it was released, he wanted to tell me that I've caused him problems. Well, I don't mean to cause anybody problems, but the information, he told us he would follow through with this to the end. And then ghosted me after that, blocked me on Facebook. And, now he wants to say that, oh, I made all that up, but he didn't make it up. We know that he didn't make it up.
And you waited a year before you even revealed it to us. So it's not like you
No,
released it right away.
No, you waited and went through the proper law enforcement channels with it.
Yeah, I did. And with that situation, I just felt like, they weren't taking him seriously. And we can't discredit every single person that comes forward with information. We cannot discredit them. And it's like, if they've ever done a drug in their life, they're not credible. You know what I mean? And that's just how this has gone for 9 years. Well, unfortunately, the person that comes forward with the information is probably going to be somebody who has been on drugs at one point or another.
Girl, real talk. This whole it's new year, time to reinvent myself trash is not the vibe for 2024. You can find someone who loves you for you, as you are. You don't need to read a stack of self-help books, only eat sad salads, or start meditating at 5 a.m. to be ready for dating. So yeah, my advice is to download Bumble and find someone who embraces you the way you are right now. Let me know how it goes.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
In fact, most of the tips that we get, the anonymous tips, people who call us and drop us emails, the first thing they say, well, at the time I was using, but I'm not using anymore. And that's why I feel compelled to come out. That's usually the first sentence that comes out of their mouth.
That's exactly right. I mean, I hear the very same thing. It's like, I know a lot of these people were very young when all of this happened, and now they want to help. They've gone on to do well in their lives and have their own families and have good jobs. And there's one in particular that I would really like, a couple that got together. The girl used to date Con Nip after Molly went missing, and then now she's with a young man there, and they're both very involved with their church. The young man has actually given a testimony to the youth in his church, talking about his lifestyle that he had prior to, giving his life over to the Lord. And there's a testimony he gave where he talks about witnessing a murder or knowing about a murder. I can't remember exactly how he stated it, but their names were being, they were people that hung out down on Long Hollow Road. We know this without a doubt. Because they got the Lord, they think that what they know is going to be just forgiven. But you know what? The Lord's going to ask them, why did you let this family suffer? When I think about those two, that's what comes to mind, I think.
How'd you find out about this?
Find out about what?
About this testimony that he gave at his church.
It was posted on Facebook.
So you actually saw it?
I saw it, yeah.
What was your feelings when you saw it?
I don't know.
Did you reach out to them?
No. I did speak to it would be her grandfather, but he claims that he has spoke to her and she knows nothing. Because like I said, they found the Lord. They're very involved in church. They've had children. They're doing well, it appears. But, that has got to be weighing heavy, heavy on their heart if their actions are genuine. And I'm no one to judge. I pray that their actions are genuine, but they also have to, I would think, come clean with the information so that they can move forward. And, the thing is, I think about, and it's like, if they did nothing, then why are they so concerned about telling what they know? They are only guilty of knowing what happened and possibly seeing a thing or two. And I don't know what the reason would be for not coming forward now. Now that they've found the Lord, now that they've gotten their lives on track, now that they have children of their own, how would they feel if this was their own kid? They need to think about those things because,
God sees
um,
everything. Let's be clear.
well, yes. And, this can happen to anybody. It happened to us.
Absolutely.
And so this can happen to anybody. I'm a lot more protective of my own family now, knowing that these wild stories out there that you hear about things happening can happen to you within your family. I really hope that they hear this and they know exactly who they are and who I'm speaking of. So I hope that they know that. I pray that they will do the right thing and come forward with any information that they may know.
And it's not just them. There's quite a few people that you've mentioned to us that have similar information and experiences and have either witnessed something that you've heard through the grapevine or they told someone. And I know this is a big telephone game and there's a bunch of rabbit holes on this case, but the same commonalities in this case keep on coming up over and over again. And that can only say one thing, and that more than likely it's a rumor, but it's a rumor based on fact.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of that. I say every tip that we've gotten, there's a little bit of truth in it all. Because every tip that we've gotten, we need to find the commonality in that tip, in all those tips, because there's one commonality. You know what I mean? And so we got to find that. But there's so many, and it's so hard. I just sent y'all over 5,000. There's a lot.
Yeah.
So I believe that there's truth in every tip that we've gotten, a little bit of truth. So to piece it all together, it's just so overwhelming. And, I've stated before, I'm not an investigator, but I just feel that, everybody's hearing little bits and pieces of the story, but yet there's some part of their story that's true. So I don't know.
Well, speaking of that, there are some things that we've been putting together here as we go through all of this stuff, because it is an enormous amount of information that we've been wading in for the past 4 years with you. So I think that it's important to kind of unpack some of these things. And one of the questions I had, the eyewitness talked about a red car. Do you remember that? Do you think that was a mistake, or you think that was real? Because in the anonymous tip that we received last week, the woman said to us that the people witnessed a red car flying down the lease road going to the well. And the eyewitness also mentioned a red car in some of the recordings. And at first we thought maybe he was mistaken because the car that was in the high-speed chase was not red. It was actually black. It was a black Honda. And this car was not a black Honda. This car was red. So do you think that those two stories are linked in some way, that maybe, and this is what I wanted to ask you, because you were there the day that they found Sabrina's car, correct?
No, well, yes, I was down there, but I never saw the car. They wouldn't let us, they wouldn't tell us where it was. So I never saw the car with my own eyes.
You just saw a photograph of it.
What do you think about this red car that keeps coming up now? It's come up twice.
Well, I think it came up one more time, if you recall. There was another.
Yes, that's right. I forgot. Yes.
So it's come up 3 times just since the podcast started. Do I think it's true? Yes. I think there's something to do with the red car. I do.
And do we know anybody who owned a red car at the time?
I don't.
But Joe Russell has the boneyard of cars. I mean, he has a junkyard, for crying out loud.
Right.
I mean,
Well, there was a boneyard of cars on the Nips property too, because
Yeah.
they found quite a few stolen vehicles there too.
I just think there's something with this red car, because it's come up a few times, and I don't know, my gut is telling me there's someone own that car that might be involved in this.
Right.
Yeah.
We had heard that about a car that had burned, and that car was red. But I have been able to verify that that actually happened a couple of months prior to their disappearance. So it was not that car that had burned. Yeah, there's been 3 different occasions where we've been told just since the podcast started something about this red car. I am not sure who would have been driving the red car or who it belonged to.
Well, in relation to the red car, because the red car was also seen speeding down towards the lease road and the oil well.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about something that we've known about for a little while. It's actually getting investigated from what we know. But I want to talk a little bit about, and if you feel comfortable talking about it, say yes. If not, just say no. So you were sent some surveillance videos that were taken from a well. And
Right.
let's talk a little bit about that and what you don't remember. You obviously you don't remember who sold. Someone anonymously sent you these videos.
They did not send those anonymously.
Okay.
Do not recall who that was, and we're working on that.
Okay. Just to kind of set it up here, you were sent about 2 or 3 surveillance videos from a surveillance camera at an oil well, and the timestamp, if I'm correct, was 7/9, and it was around like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's no one there at those wells at that hour working. We confirmed. And they sent that to you because it was suspicious. And those people don't work at the wells. And there was 2 people there. And it was a car that drove up, started noodling around the wells. You can only see certain things. Someone walked right past the camera. You can visibly see that person. You can't see the details of their face. But we're having it analyzed and taken a look at. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, that person, I recall that the person that sent it to me, and this was sent to me many years ago, I recall them telling me that this was their well or the well that they worked at or whatever, and that they got this video because some stuff was stolen from the well site. And so therefore, they checked their videos and their cameras and hence the people on this video. And it's in the general location where Molly and Colt went missing. Like you said, there's some very close characteristics of one of the gentlemen being Conniff, and then the other one, he has glasses on his head. Not real sure who that is. I suspect I know who it is, but we're getting those analyzed along with the picture of the actual person. So hopefully they can determine if that is indeed that person. The fact that something was going on there at this well site, the morning after Molly and Colt went missing in the early morning hours, is very suspicious. And so we definitely are taking a look at it and trying to determine who these people are.
And this, to be clear, this tip that you got is different than the one that we discussed last week on last week's episode. That's a totally different tip from a totally different person. Now we've had 3 tips that have come in about these wells, and all 3 tips seem to be lining up, that there's something there.
Yeah, because we have another tip that we haven't spoke about too, that came in where someone saw someone racing down that road, across the road, on an ATV, 4-wheel ATV quad, with a rifle or shotgun and a shovel. And that's next to a lease road, or right around the lease road, around the same place. So you have 3.
He was actually coming off the net property on this quad 4-wheeler. He was coming off of the net property from the south heading north. He went over the lease road into a little barn area on the other side of the lease road, but he was coming off the net property, and he had a shotgun or a rifle on the 4-wheeler, and also a shovel.
And that was at the early morning hours too. That was
yes,
because someone was just arriving at work in that area at the time and saw it.
Yes.
So a lot of connections there. Obviously, we feel like those wells need to be checked out in that area, and hopefully that'll get done. But all very, very compelling evidence. I think Jody Barth, who was on last week's podcast, who did an amazing job of kind of creating the crime spree prequel for Con, has always said this, and also Jackie Bates, who's still working on this case, said the same thing. This case is solvable. And it seems like there's a lot of obstacles to solving it. And I don't know why.
What is the reasoning for not having a search warrant on the Nip property? If these people have done nothing wrong, it's just ridiculous. But independent of that, all these other tips need to be vetted out as well. There's too many similarities to the stories.
Yeah. Well, from the law enforcement's perspective and the legal perspective, they have to have probable cause, and they don't feel like they have probable cause. They had probable cause 9 years ago after the chase. I think they probably could have gotten that then. And I think they did search a little bit of it, but not to the extent that they needed to.
But that was a year later. It was not in the early days of their disappearance. It was a year later, to the day, a year later. So anything that could have been there was already moved or cleaned up. There was no actual search. Now, they will tell you, oh, our property's been searched, but having Joe Russell or anyone from the Love County Sheriff's Department out there on your property is not a search, in my opinion, when you could basically trust no one at that time within that department. So them saying, and that's what they told us. It's been searched. Nobody's going to come on it without a warrant. That's what they said in September 2013 to us. So, and my cousin Misty, she was like, just us three girls, just let us three. We just want to walk around and look. She might have wandered up here, but they weren't having it. And it's not like we had a search party out there. It was us three girls. There's no searching it without a warrant. And at this point, anything that could have been there is probably gone.
I agree. It's
you
too
know what
long
I mean?
time.
They've had ample opportunity to do what they needed to do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about one last thing here, because I think, and I know we addressed it in past podcasts, but it's been coming up again, and that's when you did that one search and you found the bones, and you still have those bones. We have photographs of these bones, and I've actually sent them out to a medical examiner to see if they're human bones and whether or not they're human bones at all. But tell us a little bit about that, and what you feel. Do you feel those bones have anything to do with the case?
It's really hard to say. The tip was there was a refrigerator / freezer in a ravine off of Oswald Road. And it was I believe it was between Pike and Oswald. We had heard that OSBI had been out there a few days prior to check this tip out. We were actually in the area to do a search the following day, so we actually went to this location to check that. We crawled down that ravine, and there was a freezer / refrigerator. I couldn't really tell the difference in it. It was so old in that ravine. But just directly beside it, probably, I'm going to say probably 10 feet, 12 feet away from it, maybe not that far. I've showed you the pictures. I turn around and look down, and there's bones. And so we start looking at these bones, and I mean, we're talking a lot of bones. And so we're checking this out. I called the OSBI, or I asked him, I said, when you were here, did you see the bones? And he asked me, his question was, how did you know about this? And I don't recall how I know about it. I don't even think it mattered, but there was a lot of bones there. And there was also a t-shirt, a green t-shirt that said Turner High School, which Con Nip graduated from. There was also a messenger bag, a canvas messenger bag that had bones inside the bag. So I called and, telling him, well, we found all these bones. I sent him pictures. He told me, if you find a skull, call me back. So we called someone else in law enforcement to come down there and help collect the bones. And they handed them over to me. And we took them and we photographed all the bones and sent them to the medical examiner. And some of them were animal bones. I don't recall exactly what she told us, but we didn't send her a picture of every bone. But there was one that we put together. It looks like a spine. And To us, it looked like human spine, but by looking, Googling it and looking at this, that's what it looks like. Whether it has something to do with this, I don't know. It may or it may not, but it's definitely something that has always been the back of my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. You don't get a straight answer from law enforcement, and they didn't even come down and they said, if you find a skull, call us. But that's one of the reasons why everything needs to be rechecked. And it's not like we don't trust law enforcement, but if they don't give you information on things that you're bringing to them and any kind of resolution, it only begs the question, hey, listen, it's just like anything else. Let's get a second opinion here. Not because we don't believe you, but just like anything else with a doctor, he tells you have cancer. He's like, first thing he'll tell you is get a second opinion, sometimes a third opinion. And that's all we're doing here with this investigation. We're bringing in outside experts. We're talking to other people. We're getting different perspectives because I think a lot of times investigators get a little too close to the cases. And this one has been an annoyance for law enforcement for 9 years because they don't have any answers. And if they do, they're not sharing that with you. And so that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to just kind of bring sunlight to this case because it's not solved. And like I said before, we've gotten reached out by other police departments in other states for the work that we've done on our documentaries. And they want us to take on some of these cold cases because they know if we do it, it'll elevate it and it'll get eyeballs to it, and people will hopefully see it and say, hey, listen, I was in a parking lot that day. I never thought two things about it, but there was that white van, or there was that red car, there was this. And that can kind of at least open up a door to hopefully some answers. And circling back to what we were talking about in the beginning, and I think it's important to stress that we're not obstructionists. You're not an obstructionist. You've worked with law enforcement for a long time on this. You've kept your mouth shut. Now it's time to, coming up on the 10-year anniversary, we can't forget about this because already some of the names that were mentioned early on in this investigation that were potentially involved, some of those people have died.
Right.
And we don't want the truth of what happened here to die away because we need to find Molly and Colt.
I agree. Moving forward, people will understand. And you said something, it's keeping my mouth shut. I have kept my mouth shut for almost 9 years. And I have put things out there. I have argued with people and that type of thing, but I've never put anything out there like I'm putting out there currently. So to criticize me for putting the information out there is just ludicrous to me because I've had most of this information forever, and just now putting it out there. I'm not hindering an investigation because there's not an investigation. And that's what I told them. How can I be obstructing an investigation when there's not an investigation? You've made that very clear. So it is what it is. We're going to continue doing what we're doing. Nothing's going to deter us from that because right is right, wrong is wrong, and we're going to fix this wrong. So,
well, I think it's a perfect place to leave it.
Just want it to be over.
Absolutely. I think everybody does. I think everybody involved in this case wants this to be over. I don't think anybody wants to think about it. I don't think it's, we thought, hopefully, I mean, we're coming up on the 23rd episode, 23 hours. We honestly thought that we were closer when we first started the thing, and we do feel like we're closer. I just feel like there's resistance. There's resistance to solving this case, even though everybody wants to do it. And I think it's just, it's like you have people who are scared to talk, who know what's going on. You have people who've said things to law enforcement. The gentleman who who said he was held at gunpoint to bury the bodies, brought 2 U.S. Marshals to the area and then recanted his story right before he was going to show them where it was. This was not like something that he did overnight. It was over a course of a period of time where he was telling him this information. So, and then you have the whole eyewitness thing where you had to hunt down and track somebody in the woods to get information, and they revealed that information, and then he recanted that. And then we've heard another story about that too, but we're not going to talk about on how he got that information. It doesn't have to be this complicated. Everyone's so afraid to show their hand in this case because they feel like it's going to expose them in a way that they don't want people to see them in, whether or not they were withholding information and they held on to it. The people who are doing the right things are the people that are calling us and who are upset about it. They're like, I held on to this too long. I shouldn't have. And they're emotional about it. And they said, I hope this helps. That's the information. Those are the tips that we need. Those are the people we need to talk to. And we hope more of them come out. And I think they will.
Well, I do too. And, I don't belittle anybody for not coming forward sooner, that, may have heard something or seen something, because I kind of get it. I kind of understand the fear factor that some have gone through. There has been reason in the past to be fearful. There's not now. In my opinion, there's no reason to be fearful of any of these people. I hope that it just weighs on their heart to do the right thing and just help us. We can at least have some closure, have some peace, at least know where she's at. I don't even know how to explain it anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't even know how to explain what it would be like to actually know and be able to move forward with the next steps. And this part just be over. Just not knowing, golly.
Well, let's also be clear. There are a lot of good people behind the scenes who have been helping you and helping us.
Oh.
And we can't talk about them, but there's a lot of them. And we appreciate everything that they're doing and continue to do. Let's be clear. That area right now has a lot of eyeballs and ears attached to it. And there's a lot of good citizens in that area that want this case solved as well. And they're doing everything in their power to help us.
Yeah, and very much appreciated and welcomed. For sure.
Yeah. All right, Paula. Well, listen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula. And
I know this is always hard talking about this stuff.
It's awful.
But I think it's important that people hear your voice and understand that it's an everyday thing. People don't understand. They think that you're not, you just kind of come out every once in a while. You're dealing with this every day. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. I mean, we're on the phone with you. We're on the phone with you at least 3 times a day, minimum.
Yes, yes.
Every day.
You are every day. But we've got so much to go over. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
And we've had some incredible people come forward to help, and that is, like you said, very much appreciated and welcome. So, yeah, it is a lot. It is a lot, but it's necessary. So.
But you do feel that we're closer, don't you? Because I feel like we're closer.
Mm-hmm, I do too.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do. I feel like we just need to continue putting the information out there because it triggers something every time we do. That's what it feels like. It's triggering things with people. And it's been 9 years, like we discussed. People have grown up. Like they've told us, I used to be in that world. I'm not in that world anymore. And I just can't live with myself knowing that such and such. And I think it's going to trigger the right person.
Yep.
Eventually.
Exactly.
So.
All right. Well, keep on fighting the good fight. We will too. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks,
as we always
Paula.
do.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
We're going to be releasing new information and recordings that have never been heard before. We will also be talking to more power players in the legal field who will help us unravel the clues about what happened to Molly and Colt.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from a methamphetamine addiction, please contact the American Meth Addiction Hotline.
If you or anyone you know has been the victim of sexual abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
For any tips relating to the disappearance of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, please contact 833-4-MOLLY and Colt, and they will be directed to the proper law enforcement agency.
All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content. Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and listen to Vi's original song, Take Me Back, written for Molly Miller.